Hello viewers, welcome to another episode from the shop. Today we're going to be working on a project that involves taking an opening in a kitchen that is for a desk and converting that opening to a storage cabinet. And it's going to involve creating a frame and two doors. This is a picture of a desk in the kitchen that they want to put cabinet doors so that they can swing out, and they do not want any center dividers. So what I need to create is a frame that goes around this opening. The problem is the frame where the opening is not straight. This side is 22 and 9/16, while this side is 22 and 11/16. And across the top I have 29 and 15/16. And at the bottom above the molding it is 29 and 13/16. So it is 1/8 of an inch off, and I'm believing that this corner is about 3/32 of an inch out of square. So what I plan to do is create two L-shaped pieces, one here and then a second here, and install those separately. That way I don't have to worry so much about trying to create a square frame and then have to shave 3/32 of an inch off one side or the other and end up with some kind of a gap that I can't deal with. So the first thing we're going to do is make the frame and the rail and stile components for the two cabinet doors. For the frame, there'll be a top and a side piece, and that will require 4 pieces, and what I'm doing is making these out of ash. And what you'll want to do, since these are rough sawn, is on your joiner surface one side flat, and then we'll run these through the surfacing planer to make them perfectly smooth. For the doors, we're going to have rails and stiles. And then for the panels, I've switched from ash to white pine. These were from some trees that I've cut down, and we'll see if they machine the way I hope they'll machine. And let's talk about some of the tools we're going to need. To make the cabinet door rail and stiles, you'll want to have on hand or buy a cutter, and it'll come with 2 parts because there is a joint for the rail and stile that meets together, and also a groove or dado for your panel to slide into. And then you'll need a panel cutter, and this is one model that cuts both a profile on the face of the panel and a profile on the back side of the panel with a 1/4 inch space in between that will go into your rail and stile dados. Then you'll have to select some kind of a hinge that you want. This is a soft closed hinge, and as part of that process you'll need to have a cutter, and this is a cutter I bought, 33 millimeters, that will cut the hole that this will fit into. And lastly, the door hardware. So we have the ash sized for width and depth. But one of the problems with ash is you get these chip outs. Let's see that. So before we go any further, I'm going to use some of this product as a filler. We'll apply that with well, it's a powdered mix, so you can mix it up to different thicknesses, but we'll apply that with a putty knife, and then we'll come back and sand before we get into shaping. You have to look at this carefully under light just to make sure you get it all. Get all those chips. The reason that's not important to the finish per se is it's going to be painted, so you're not going to see this filler. We patched all our pieces. We'll let that dry. Tomorrow we'll sand it, work on some shaping. So on the drum stander, I sanded these pieces to 150. Now I'm just going to lightly hit it with some 220. So for the frame, I have to cut the left and the right one at two different lengths. But first, what I want to do is make sure my ends are squared up. Then I'll measure them and cut them on the radial arm saw. I'm going to use these cutoffs as a trial. I have the smallest biscuit I have in stock, and we use these cutoffs. Since these are only 2 inches wide, we'll see if the slot's going to be too big or not. Looks kind of iffy. See that slot shows on the bottom. That wouldn't be a problem. Question is, do I want to do that or use dowels? Since it's being painted, I could probably just clean that up a little bit. Maybe bring the slot this way. Yeah, I think that'll work. So these corners have been marked off center, so the biscuit will actually be more up here. I'll be able to cut off those tips. Those will be hidden, and I won't have to do any filling. Well, since I know the top of my frame opening is 3/32 out of square, rather than dealing with, trying to plane that on site and make it fit, what I did is I laid out my square here and got a 90-degree corner, using that as my straight edge, which is 90 degrees to this. What I did is I shifted this top end, shifted that top corner over 3/32 of an inch. So I'll put my splines or biscuits in there. I'll glue that up with a pipe clamp and let it dry. And we'll do the same thing on the other corner. And we'll have our two parts that can be assembled on site. Now, since the bottom left corner of the face frame has to go around a piece of baseboard molding. I measured that when I was on site, and I have transferred that image to the left style, and we'll cut that out on the bandsaw. With the frames assembled, I'm now going to be drilling pocket holes in the face frames so that they can be attached to the desk frames. The last two holes I want to drill will be to attach the corners together once I'm on site. So I'm going to drill a hole that'll go through like this, even though that'll have a biscuit. I had to add some blocking on either side because this clamping mechanism really won't work. So let's see how this goes. All right, that worked. And here we go with the last one. All right, now we can get to work on the face frame. So we're switching over to the router table now and need to do setups for the rails and stiles. This will be the profile for the cabinet that will go next to the panel. That's the slot for the panel. Done a test piece so I can make sure I have my profile close to matching what my client's panels look like. Since we're using ash, it's kind of a squirrely grain. A lot of times it's subject to tear out. So what I've tried to do is orient all of my pieces to minimize tear out. Next thing I do when I'm building doors is to change my bit, and there's a center bearing here. I want to make sure that that bearing is flush with the face of your fence, and then do a test cut to make sure your height is correct. And so this is my test piece. And there's some slop in there. That could be just because the manufacturer of the bits from China is not as precision as some blade makers or cutters. But with some glue in there and clamping, I think we'll be fine. What this also shows me that the stile piece has to be 1/4 of an inch longer than that face, because you do have essentially some overlap. Because if you cut them 1/4 inch, that's a 1/2 inch too short, your doors are going to be too narrow. panel slots are 3/8 of an inch deep. So what I want to do is make sure my panels are not too wide. I need a little bit of room for expansion, so I'll cut them about 1/8 of an inch short. I fooled around quite a while trying to get the cutter just to the exact height, so I have a nice tight fit. So we're ready to do the drilling of the hinge holes, and these directions that came with it are pretty much worthless. Doesn't even tell you what these are for. But if your pack contains 3 wood screws and 2 that look more like machine screws, that's for these plugs. That's assuming you're drilling a 1/4 inch hole and putting those in here and here. Now it also talks about making sure that this 35mm hole is 3 millimeters in from the edge. So you want to make sure that when you're drilling these, you don't drill on this back side. And that's why I did this mock-up, just to make sure, because this would be the face frame. This is the bevel and the panel. I want to make sure that opens. So when you set up your drill press, make sure you have your 3mm here on what will be the outside edge of your frame. For my installation, I've measured 3.5 inches from the top and bottom edges. I've set my stop so that the cutting edge of the bit is 3 millimeters in. It's the 35mm bit, and there's this edge here that gives you an automatic depth cut, so you don't have to put a stop on your machine. I can now install a hinge, mark its location so I can pre-drill that. And the face frame, I'm not going to worry about pre-drilling at this point, but I want to get these holes pre-drilled before I paint. Be helpful maybe if I counterpunch these. When doing panels like this with natural wood, I expect more wood movement, so I always pre-paint or pre-finish the panel so that if it shrinks or expands, you don't see joints between the rails and stiles. So right now we're going to glue it up. The last thing I need to do is put a small cove along the edges of the frames. I'll just do one edge to show you. Well, that's it for the doors. We're now ready to paint. To put a finish on the project, the client had some leftover paint from a previous kitchen painting project. We're going to use that. I thinned the latex paint down just a little bit and have run it through one of these filters. And we'll do a test spray on this piece of cardboard and see if we like the results. Well, the doors have been completed in the frame. With the first coat of paint, it just created so much paint smog or fog. I just decided to do the second coat outdoors. But it turned out, I think, pretty nice. All I'm left with now is to finish with the installation. Today is installation day, and the first thing I wanted to do is dry fit the frame because the opening is out of square. So I've made some minor coping saw adjustments to that piece, and at this point in time I think we're ready to screw it in. Last thing to install is this little kick plate. Goes in a slot, holds that side. Fasten it with a screw. The installation is complete. Got soft closing mechanisms. Doors are lined up. Looks pretty good. Well, thanks for sticking with me through this project. I hope you've enjoyed it and maybe learned a little something. If you've enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you click that like button and consider subscribing. Until next time, River Guide saying we'll see you around. Take care.